Let's go to the Environment and Water Minister, Tanya Plibersek. Now, Tanya, good morning to you. Thanks for your time this morning. Before we get onto environmental matters, I do want to get your thoughts on this union pitch this morning. They want a new deal on wages at next week's summit. It wants entire industries to negotiate the same pay and conditions. I know this is not your portfolio, but I just want to get your thoughts anyway. Do you think that sounds fair?
Look, I think it's important at the Jobs Summit to talk about how we see improvements in wages. Australia's coming at the end of years of flatlining wages, in fact real wages going backwards because the cost of living is outstripping wages growth. We need to have sensible conversations about how we lift wages, and that includes, of course, including improving productivity for businesses. When businesses are making more money, they should be paying their workers better wages.
Business groups have expressed some alarm, though, suggesting that this is 1970s style enterprise bargaining and a one-size-fits-all approach won't work. Is that a reasonable concern?
Look, the reason the Treasurer and the Prime Minister are having this Jobs Summit is so they can bring people together. That means unions sitting at the table, it means business sitting at the table, it means having a sensible conversation about how we see improvements in people's wages and improvements in business profitability.
Are you for or against higher migration?
Well, I'm for sensible migration. So at the moment we have some very obvious short-term pressures with skills shortages. Every business I talk to in my own local electorate here in Sydney says they can't find people, from dishwashers to IT specialists and everybody in between. So we do have to see some migration to fill those skills shortages. But we also need to be training more Australians. The problem with the previous government's approach is they focused on short-term migration to fill skills gaps, and they cut funding to TAFE and they cut funding to universities. They stopped training Australians for those jobs. We need to balance the two. We also want to see, when we have migrants to Australia, we'd love them to become permanent residents here and eventually citizens. We want people to put down roots and become part of our local community, not just focus on churning through short-term migration to meet our skills needs.
So do you expect that there will be an answer on that point at this Jobs Summit?
Oh, I think we'll have a really strong discussion about the sort of sensible levels of migration we need. I think everybody agrees that we've got a very pressing short-term skills shortage and that we need to meet that, including through migration. But I think there's also pretty strong agreement that we've dropped the ball, the previous government dropped the ball on training Australians for those skills gaps. Like, a lot of these areas of skills shortage were identified on our skills shortages lists for years at a time, much longer than it takes to train a plumber or an electrician or a chef. If we know that we've got shortages in particular areas, we need to be making it possible for Australians to afford to get the training they need to fill those gaps. I mean, another great example is aged care, childcare. We need to be paying people decently. There are people who have left fields like aged care and early childhood education and care because they can't afford to keep working in those fields. They can't afford to pay the mortgage on the money they're getting. We need to address some of those issues as well to make those jobs more attractive for Australia.